Good day and happy Sunday, dear friend in Christ. Today is the 15th Sunday of Ordinary Time, year C, and our readings are taken from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 30, verses 10 to 14, Psalm 40, letter of St. Paul to the Colossians, chapter 1, verses 15 to 20, and the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, verses 25 to 37. How can we find the will of God? This was a common question to the ancient people. The first reading gives us some kind of answer. It says, listen to your heart and soul. Moses called the people and all of us to a total obedient to God's injunction with the whole of our heart and soul, that is, the whole of our being. God's instructions are not beyond our reach. They are not obscure. It is in our heart. It is very near. It is in the heart and mouth of every person so that we can do it. Verse 14 of the first reading today tells us, thus his commandments are not far or hard. The gospel presents us the parable of the Good Samaritan who drove home the point that really an authentic love that is required of us goes beyond socio-cultural, racial, financial, national, gender, or whatever boundaries. For Christ, we are all to be neighbors without borders. The golden rule, love your neighbors as yourself, as contained in the Gospel of Luke that we read today, chapter 10, verse 27, which we hear today, is not just a Christian thing. Every conceivable religion or culture in the world has the golden rule in one form or another. For instance, in Judaism, it is what is hateful to you, do not do to a fellow man. That is the law. All the rest is commentary. In Islam, it says, no one of you is a believer until he desires for his brother that which he desires for himself. Hinduism has it that this is the sum of duty to do nothing unto others which will cause you pain if done to you. Jesus' parable today could have made his Jewish listeners angry. Why? Like it may make many of us angry today, because he mentioned groups who didn't help, the priest, the one who was going to the temple and the like. Everyone who sees him or herself as a good or true Christian cannot easily just pass by anyone in need. Often we look for excuses and reasons not to act as true and good Christians. Sometimes the excuse is simply, it is late. I must get home before it's dark. My children must be worried that I'm not home yet, or my parents must be worried. Or is it the case that, I'm tired. I have had a very long and busy day, serving God and serving others. I've been at work and serving the poor. I'm done for the day. Or to say he or she is not one of us. He is not a Christian. He is not a Catholic. He doesn't attend our church. Oh, she is wayward. He is a sinner. She wears artificial hair. All kinds of excuses. She wears trousers. Most of the time she's indecently dressed. Different excuses. It's not our tribe. It's not from our country. It's not from my community. He doesn't go out with us. We have asked him to join the community watch. He wouldn't. She wouldn't. The lawyer asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? As a master of the Jewish law, the lawyer knew the law very well. He knew the law, but he does not practice or know how to live the law. Rather, than answer him, Jesus, the Master, told him a story, and he was made to answer the question for himself. Now he did not ask him who was the wounded man a neighbor to, but which one proved himself a neighbor. So we should be asking ourselves, to whom can I prove myself as neighbor? Not just who is my neighbor. I can decide not to be a neighbor to my neighbor. So God is not asking us who is my neighbor. He's asking to whom can you be neighbor, which means it goes beyond boundary. You can actually be neighbor to somebody who is far off, but in need of your help. As Christians, we should behave as Christ does. We are to come to help of anyone who is in need. We must be like Jesus, as we have in the second reading. He holds the first place in love for his brethren. He was the first and the authentic Samaritan. He gave his life for us even while we were still sinners. And he's inviting us to do the same, to give up things for the sake of others. A story was told of a rabbi who asked his disciples a question. And the question was, when could you recognize the moment when night gives place to the day? Probably you can answer it as well. When will you say, oh, okay, you look at and say, okay, you say, oh, okay, it's morning, it is day. The first disciple said, when you can see the difference between a dog and a sheep. Of course, the rabbi answered, no. The second disciple said, when you can see the difference between a mango and an orange tree. The master again responded, the rabbi, no. The rabbi then said, you will know it is morning or it is day over the night when you look at the face of any stranger to you and you recognize him or her as your brother or your sister. Until then, it is still night. When was the last time you showed compassion to a person in need? A stranger, a neighbor. Christ wants us to be neighbors without borders. He wants us to reach out to everyone, anyone who is in need. He's not asking us who is our neighbor. He's asking us to prove to be neighbors to everyone without borders. If today you hear his voice, harden not your heart. Have a blessed day and a wonderful week.